start. So yes, let's start.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've come to the end of the little booklet. We have two stories, one by Hemingway, one by Ovejas. So yeah, so I just wanted to know what you thought about them, which one you preferred. Maybe we can start with Hemingway's story because it's shorter. We can talk about it briefly, and then we can talk about the other one. But yeah, just in general, your thoughts. I don't know if you've ever read anything else by Hemingway, how much you know about him. And yeah, like Hills Like White Elephants, it's a very interesting story because Hemingway was very famous for something associated with him, which is like the theory of the iceberg, where there's a tiny thing on the surface, which is the story, but like if you read between the lines, there's so much going on, just like an iceberg underwater. So that's like a very typical Hemingway characteristic where he doesn't say much, but there's a lot going on. So I don't know if you picked up on that in this particular story. Like, what are they really talking about? This American and the girl. So yeah, I thought maybe we can just start talking about this story, and then we'll move on to the other one. So, any thoughts?
I thought that for today it was only the other one. We came all the way from Cuba, so I haven't read the other one.
Carmen, have you read it?
The one, the Hemingways.
Yeah.
Hemingway.
Yes, I've read
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then I'll briefly talk about
it. Is a lot between the lines. It seems a simple scene about a couple. You can think that is a couple, but I've looked in the web to.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, because you have teachers to read about the authors, and I've done this, and in the internet they talk about the Hills Like White Elephants, but instead of that, in the dialogues you can see that there is a story between them, but there is something that that they don't see in the same way. But if I couldn't have known what is the theme if I didn't read in the internet.
Oh, so you didn't have like a. I mean, okay, so
more or less something about love, about some, but the exactly what was the who motivates the ¿cómo es discussion? The discussion, the real theme, I didn't.
Yeah, so it's not so much the real, like, for Gloria, who hasn't read this, so it's on page 124, and it's like very short. It's like 5 pages, 6 pages. It's essentially a couple who's waiting for a train. They are in Spain, and it's an American man and a woman. We don't really know where the woman is from because we never get much information. And they're just having a conversation, and there's like something that's not great about them. So they're a little bit angry sometimes. And then, so they're talking about one thing on page 126, where the man says, it's really an awfully simple operation. So they talk about an operation, but it's never made explicit what it is. But you can get an idea from dynamics. And that's what the story is about. There's never really it's a very ambiguous story. There's never a resolution. We don't know what's going to happen to them. And this is very typical of Hemingway. It's just like a slice of life is how it's known. These types of stories, which were quite typical in the 20th century in general. So rather than having a full story, it's just like a look at somebody's life, which I find very human as well. Like it's something that could happen to anybody. But yeah, so Carmen, did you find it online? Did you find what they were talking about?
Yes, I found.
So what did the internet tell you?
It's about an abortion, and after it seems because uh, the the man is talking is nothing, is not, is a simple operation, and for her she told it's not really an operation at all. It's the only thing that makes us unhappy, and you understand why. For him is very simple. Is you can do you do this operation and everything will be okay. It will be it's a solution for us to be the same as we are, but for her is not. For her is he she thinks that no, this is not only an operation, and for me it's not. And she is worrying, she is preguntándose cosas, she is asking her, yes, she's thinking, and she doesn't look clear. So
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like he lacks empathy. Like he doesn't understand what it is like for her to have to go through that, because it's like, well, maybe she actually wants the child, or maybe she doesn't. But it's normal for her to be scared and to be worried and to spend some time thinking about how that can affect her life, because it's a big thing to consider, right? I have friends who have gone through that, and it's like, even if they are clear, like, I don't want a child, it's a very strange thing to have to go through. So it's interesting that he's like, oh no, but it's fine, it's nothing. And I find the language is very sometimes like exaggerated, like everything will be perfect, it's perfectly simple, it's like it's nothing. And it's like, you have to understand that it's something, and that it's fine to say, hey, I understand, it's scary. Yeah, I don't know, it's interesting because there's something that's typically Hemingway-esque as well, which is these conversations where actually there's not a lot going on. Like they talk, but they don't really say a lot, and to the point where the woman is like, where does she say? She says something like, "Can you please stop talking," or something, which I find
199, 29.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Just
I
like,
underlined the same sentence.
Yes. Also, it reminds me of I think I have it here. Yeah. I don't know if you know Raymond. Well, yeah, Raymond Carver. We saw it last year. He has a collection called "Will You Please Be Quiet, Please." So he actually was very inspired by Hemingway. So this is a collection of stories that also talk about couples who have difficulty talking, things like that. So this is like from 1976 or something. Yeah, 1976. So this is like 50 years later or something. But it's that idea of communication and miscommunication, the difficulty of speaking, and sometimes it's like, just stop talking, like, because your language is making this worse. And I think that's very evident in this story. Which, yeah, so I really like this story. I don't know if you notice as well how much they are drinking. Like all the time, I was like, okay, this is the 4th drink, this is the 5th drink. So they're like getting proper drunk.
And in few minutes, because there is only 50 minutes in the moment they sat to get the first drink, and when the train comes is 55 minutes to. In a very short time, he resumes that moment of a woman to get in trouble and how to solve a problem.
Exactly. Which again is typically Hemingway, like a lot of his novels as well. I don't know if you've read anything by Hemingway before, but for example, he's got a novel called The Sun Also Rises, which is very nice. He's got a Farewell to Arms, A Movable Feast. Like, he's got a lot of famous novels, and in many of them, especially, for example, The Sun Also Rises, is people who go to Europe to drink and party, and obviously they have a lot of problems because it's like the modernist period after the First World War. It's a lot of like psychological issues for people who have seen the war and who are traumatized, but they act like nothing happened. So it's like, oh, let's just get drunk all the time, let's party, and let's ignore our problems. So this is kind of the same. It's like drink, drink, drink. Let's just have an abortion. Let's forget about this. Let's go back to the way things were, without actually stopping and saying, maybe there's more that is actually happening here. Maybe it's not just the baby that's the problem in our relationship. Maybe it's more things, and we don't want to talk about them. So that's Hemingway. Like, the essence of Hemingway is like that fear of communication and getting drunk to avoid things, which I find it's like fascinating because it's really, really human. And I think Hemingway was really good at doing this because it was a time when there was a lot of experimentation in novels and stories, because this was in the 1920s. So there's a lot of novels that are very complicated to understand. If you read them once, it's like, I need time, like James Joyce and Virginia Woolf and all these writers. And Hemingway was like almost like a journalist, like minimal language, like a few sentences, short, like not a lot of metaphors, not a lot of adverbs, just like straight to the point. And to me, it's like, just as experimental novels like Virginia Woolf are a reflection of our mind, which can be very fragmentary and very confusing, this is also very human, where it's like these silences where we don't want to talk about things, we are scared to communicate openly. So yeah, that was my whole discourse on this, but I just really like this type of literature personally. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the essence of the story. Obviously, we can go into a lot of detail, like look at this word, and which is something I really like doing, but it's kind of more literary. But that's my question is, Carmen, since you have read this, do you think at the end she's gonna get the abortion or not?
I think she's gonna get. I don't know why, but I think she's gonna get. I feel fine. She said, "There's nothing wrong with me. I feel fine." I think she will go. She will do the abortion to be with him.
Maybe, yeah. I think because I'm conflicted. I'm not sure, because they have such a fear of confrontation that it's like, maybe she doesn't want to have to face the reality of having an abortion, but then at the same time, maybe she knows this life, this is more comfortable, and having to think of the possibility of her life changing so much by having a child. Maybe he will abandon her. Maybe she won't have the money to support the child. So maybe it's easier. And sometimes that's something you can see in Hemingway stories. It's like people take the easy way out because they're scared of the unknown, which makes total sense.
Less troubles for the future. It's
exactly.
Trouble right now, but for the future, it would be better.
Especially since like they're always talking about going back to a point in the past, which is also something typically, not just Hemingway, the idea that very human to idealize something, and then we want to go to that time always, and we always look for the same experience and feelings that we had once, but life continues. You can never repeat something. You experience something new. But for them, it's always looking for that moment that they experience, is like that type of love at the beginning of a relationship, or that type of emotion. And it's like, no, that's past, and now you don't have to go back to that. You can go look for a better future. But they never do that. So they just get drunk all the time, which is terribly bad. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you have any more comments about this particular story or anything.
If you want to comment bit by bit. It's fine for me. I like it. Even I haven't read it.
I mean, it's, to me, what I find, well, first of all, thank you. But to me, what I really like about just because Carver, it's the writer that I'm studying for my PhD is Raymond Carver. So I'm really interested in looking at language and how they communicate. And it's interesting to see how in this story on the first page on 124, the first thing is like the way they are introduced is very vague. So we have the American and the girl. So if anything, we know more about him because we know where he's from, but from the girl, we don't really know anything. So they're nameless, and I feel that's very interesting, which accentuates the ambiguity of the story. And then also at the very bottom of that page, the man says, "I might have, just because you say I wouldn't have doesn't prove anything." And I think that's the first moment where we see something that's wrong there, like a little bit of like an argument starting. Because first it's like, oh, it's pretty hot, let's have 2 beers, we're fine. And then there's the idea of, in English, it's called like bickering, which is kind of like arguing, but not in a super violent way or not in an obvious way, but more like these little things here and there that they say to each other that are a little bit mean sometimes. So that to me is like, ooh, something is wrong here. So obviously there's something annoying them, but Hemingway, like the narrator, doesn't tell us. And then as you continue reading, the conversation they have is so superficial. Like they're just like, are gonna drink this, look at the hills, look at that, blah, blah, blah. And then it's interesting also at the bottom of page 125, where, which she says, I wanted to try this new drink, or I think it's the man, I don't remember. The girl. I wanted to try this new drink. That's all we do, isn't it? Look at things and try new drinks. Or it's like she's almost aware. Like I feel like she has a little bit more awareness, and she's like, that's the only thing we do. We just like go places. Like with the idea of looking at things is like traveling, which is the typical thing people did in the 20s, people who had a bit of money. Like, let's forget about the US. Let's go to these like Paris and Barcelona and like these incredible cities in Europe. And let's get drunk. And like, that's it. That's what they do. But you can see here that something's wrong. So it seems like they painted like we're having a great time, but actually we're trying to escape from our troubles. And that's, again, something that in Carver stories you can see always, people trying to escape their worries and their troubles. So it's like drinking, drinking, drinking.
Oh.
And so then the conversation you see is mostly the man speaking and the girl saying less things or being silent or like, I don't know. And I feel like that's very interesting as well, because then she's the one who wants him to be silent. Like, just shut up. I need to think, because he's trying to cover up what's happening. I don't know. It's a lot of repetitions as well. I don't know if you noticed, like on page 127, where it's like, I don't care about me. What do you mean? I don't care about me. What do you mean? I don't care about me. Well, I care about you. Oh, yes, but I don't care about me. So it's like, to me, it feels like the man is centering himself rather than allowing the woman to have her time to express herself. Like, I care about me. Like, if a person told me I don't care about me, my answer would not be, well, I care about you. It would be, why not? What can I do to make you care about yourself? Because if you don't care about yourself, how can you care about another life, another baby, or whatever? So that's kind of what it felt like to me. And that was basically what I noticed in the language, is like these kinds of repetitions, these kinds of like silences, and then a lot of hyperboles. So it's like exaggerations, like, we'll be happy, we'll be fine. It's kind of, made me laugh a little because it reminds me of in the movies when people say everything will be fine, I promise. And it's like, well, maybe it won't. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. Let's try to face it and be strong and just do it as best as we can. But this is the same here. It's like very reductive, like simplifying something that's really complex. Like on page 128 at the beginning, it's like we could have all of this. We could have everything, and every day we make it more impossible. So you kind of see that juxtaposition between everything and impossible, which is like, first of all, you cannot have everything. Second of all, it's not impossible. It's just try to find a middle ground. But I feel like they always live in that kind of land of extremes, right? Like we need things to be perfect, and because we don't have that, everything is terrible. So let's just drink and let's ignore our problems so we don't have to face them. Which again, I find superhuman, and that's what I like about, not superhuman as in like superhero, but like very human. And that's why I like Hemingway stories, because people sometimes read them and they're like, that's it? Like, where's the answer? Where's the solution? But it's like life. Sometimes we don't have a solution, or there's no end until like death, obviously, but like things, like there's not like clear endings to things. It's like, oh, something starts dissolving and a new thing appears and or mixes with another. So that's what I think is really like beautiful about these stories. And then one last thing in terms of English, usually what I tell people when they read stories, I'm like, look at the beginning, look at the end, things like that. In this case, look at the title. What do you think the title, what do you think that was the choice for the title?
What? The title?
Yeah, like why do you think, like even Gloria, if you haven't read the story, but from what I've told you, like why do you think the mention of like elephants or
I
you don't have to know it. I mean, I don't know.
I look at I search in the
Online. I do that too. Like it's not that you have to magically interpret the story. Like it's also another part of reading. So no problem.
because and I found that this is an expression to express something is to para mantener algo
Like
to
something, or I don't know. It depends on the context.
something.
Yeah.
You have to waste a lot to keep something, or the benefits you get from something is less than what you have to invest.
Okay.
Something
Ooh,
like
I hadn't heard that one. I mean, there are multiple. Nobody knows what the title is. That's the first thing. So I think that's important to remember. Like Hemingway's not here to tell us this is what I meant. I like to also, like, I don't know what, another story by Raymond Carver called Elephant. So maybe not the most original, but anyway, when I think of elephant, I think of the expression "the elephant in the room."
In the room, yeah. I thought of this expression, but I don't know.
Well, within the context of the story, it makes total sense, right?
No, because the exact meaning of the expression is that there is something you don't want to talk about. Yeah, is it the meaning?
Yeah, exactly. It's like as if there was an elephant in your room and you're ignoring it, and it's like it's like an obvious thing, and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, but you don't want to talk about it. Yeah.
And in this case, they are kind of talking about it, but I feel like first of all, they never say the word itself, like abortion. If we are to assume this is an abortion, maybe it's something else, but that's what would make the most sense for their relationship. Especially because I think of an abortion that would affect two people generally, you know, like either an operation, either you have to do it, otherwise your health can be affected. And if not, it's like for another reason, which generally is an abortion, especially at this time. Another kind of operation is like plastic surgery, but I honestly don't think at this time they're going to be talking about a nose job. So to me, that's the only other possibility. It's like, okay, clearly it's an abortion. but they're not talking about it, like they're going around it all the time, you know? It's never like, okay, what are we going to do about this? Or another elephant in the room for me would be the relationship itself. It's not just the kid, which again is very typical of this kind of type of literature, realist literature, specifically about couples. Hemingway, Carver, Cheever, these types of writers. It's about not addressing the real problems and blaming something else or somebody else. So it's always like, oh, I think in order to fix our relationship, we need to get rid of the dog. And it's like, no, the dog has nothing to do with the problems in your relationship. And in this case, we need to have an abortion to fix our relationship. I don't think that's the case. I like the idea of having an abortion makes sense. And for some people, that's the step to take. But it's not because that's going to fix the relationship. It's because that's for financial reasons or because you don't want a child or whatever reason. So in this case, it's like, to me, that's the elephant in the room. The thing they're not talking about is the real problems in their relationship. Yeah, sorry.
But then, what about this color? No, white elephant on the hill, right? I mean, I know the expression about the elephant, but these other aspects, no, about the color and that comparison with the hill.
What I am like, that's my research online told me that there's something in America called the white elephant sale, which is kind of like a yard sale where you give something, like you donate something and you can get something in return. So in this case, they donate, they get rid of the child, and then they get their relationship back or their happiness back. So that's a possibility. But that is just because, well, that's what they see around them. So I guess it's like, that could be something that's my interpretation. It could be like something that's constantly around them. That's what they see wherever they look. They are surrounded by hills. So that's like present in their life, but that's just making stuff up. So
nobody knows exactly about the type.
The beauty of interpreting literature, that you can make stuff up all the time if you sound convincing enough. Well, I mean, I guess my experience in my degree and my master's and everything, it helps me to do this. But there comes a point where it's more hypothesis, like this might be the case, but we don't know. But I thought it was nice to talk about, like, I always like to look at the title and think, why did the author choose this title?
Yes, I think the title is always very important because it's like the theme, or it should be the theme of the story or the book.
Yeah, it should like summarize or highlight something essential. Although what's interesting is that sometimes the titles are not chosen by the authors, but by the editors. So that's something that sometimes can like divert our attention to something else that maybe the author was like, no, this is what I want you to focus on. But whatever, I think it's a nice title. And also I feel like from a distance, it's interesting because the title actually is not related to the story like directly, in the same way that in the story they're not directly talking about, the abortion. So that's something ambiguous again, which is the whole story, ambiguity. And I think like the very last sentence of the story, what Carmen, you were saying before, is like, I feel fine, there's nothing wrong with me, I feel fine. It's again this idea like there's nothing wrong with me, like it's all good, it's perfect. It's like, no, it isn't, just let's talk about this. But they're always going in circles, they're not really talking about the real problem. So yeah, I don't know. It's a very nice story. Sometimes we studied at university as well with students, and many times they don't understand. They're like, an abortion? What? Obviously, if you read it the first time, it's not like, oh, the first thing that you think about is, oh, clearly an abortion. But with the students, we sometimes get a bit angry because it's like, you have to read it more than once. Like, you're at university. In your case, it's not the same. But yeah, but it's sometimes it needs a couple of reads to really see what it's saying and what's happening. Shall we move on to the other one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have about 30 minutes. So this, I don't know if you like this one. I really liked it.
Yes, very much.
I wasn't familiar before this book club. I wasn't really familiar with this author. So when I was trying to put together all the stories, I tried to put together writers from different places, so like Indian American and like in this case Cuban American. So I was trying to give a variety of writers as just like white man. It's like, let's have a bit more because there are already a lot of white men that we can have easy access to. So let's find others. And I really like this one. So I don't know if you can talk about it.
It's another American accent.
Yeah, another American. I think that's funny because in America, there's a lot of what we call hyphenation. So the idea of un guion. So there's Americans, and then there's Cuban American, Mexican American, Asian American, African American. So that means that by default, being American is being white, which is not the case, especially considering America is a country of immigrants. I guess the idea of immigrants, often people take it as, no, but it's the original English immigrants and the Dutch and all of that. But today, when you say American, it's white, and it shouldn't be like that. I also think it's beautiful that people try to reclaim their dual identities. Like, I'm Cuban and I'm American, so I'm Cuban American, which in this story is clearly this idea of identity and duality. Just very quickly, I'm going to say that because normally I don't like to focus on the author, I do think it's interesting to have a look at contextualizing it, but I don't think that should necessarily influence the story. But in this case, Atsi Ovejas, she was born in 1956, so actually the year my mother was born, so 63 or 64. So it's like Cuban American. She's a writer, and then most of her stories or novels have to do with sexuality or and identity. Like she is a lesbian, and then she is Cuban American. So she presents that, like, I think she said that for her activism is writing. So in the same way that other people like go to demonstrations or create charities or any way you want to carry out your activism, for her, most of it is writing. So she tries to present that in her stories. So that was the only like thing I wanted to say to see this story and to have a little bit of background. And yeah, that's it. So tell me.
Well, I also really quickly read a little bit of her background, and I think it was quite similar to the character in the story, wasn't it? Because she also went to America when she was a child. Well, I don't know, quite a lot of similarities. I don't know.
Yeah. That's why I mentioned this, because it's like you can see this in this story, right? Like you can see that influence.
Yeah. And I also like the way she writes. No, the style is also very nice because it's this going back and forth. I don't know if it's correct, this expression, back and forth.
Back and forth. Although I was thinking that in this case, it's more like forth and back, like
forth and back.
Because it's like when it starts, it's the present. Normally the expression is back and forth, but in this case, what I feel like it's like the first page is present tense, and then I will do this, and I like, which is very, very peculiar.
Yeah.
Like I'm not used to seeing this type of writing. Normally it's like I go to the past from the present, but here she is positioning herself as a child and talking about how her life is going to change or not.
Yeah.
What you want to think about, yeah.
Yeah, but then it's interesting because sometimes you get lost in this story, and suddenly she brings you back to reality. No, you are still there, like in the customs, entering the country, and that, I think that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, especially within the context of this story, I think it's even more special and interesting because on the very first second paragraph, you see that I just got off the boat. So it's like she's an immigrant. She just moved from Cuba to America, and now she's talking about the future, which is a very typical thing for migrants to do, which is like I'm moving in hopes to find a better future and a better life. So it's more that projection into the future. So it's very interesting to see what happens to her, what happens to her parents in the future. That's maybe not what they expected, and how that can affect them and all of that. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you looked also at the setting a little bit. So like 1963.
Well, yeah, about the political things that were that were going around this period. Yeah, I like this story because it's a mixture of different things. I mean, the immigration stuff, and then the political things, also the feminist or lesbian. So I like the stories where you can find different topics to think about. No, not only one direction of the story, but you can see different things, and they are very, very well mixed up.
Yeah, because just like Hemingway is like one thing, one moment in life. We in this story is like 35 minutes, and then here you have a lifetime, because we learn that she will die from cancer. So it's like you see everything, all the essential moments of her life. You're gonna see in this, like in these like 20 pages. So that also, I think that's why short stories are fascinating to me, because in a short story you can do like tell an entire life. You can also tell 5 minutes. You could arguably do that in a novel, but that would be a very dense novel. It's not like Ulysses from James Joyce. Like it's one day, but it's 1,000 pages, and that like no,
Normally, I'm more fan of short stories than books. But I mean, I long stories. I read both, but short stories I like because they concentrate a lot of things in few pages, and then novels sometimes they tend to be very long, and I like the short stories in general.
Yeah, I love them too, and I think it takes a lot of skill to be able to write a good short story.
Yeah.
This is not just, you have to know what to say, what not to say, how to create that, like, well, Edgar Allan Poe would say like the unity of effects. So like what are you trying to do with this little time and space that you have? Whereas with a novel, you can go on forever. And so it's actually, I remember talking about this with the students at university, because we were reading a story by Edgar Allan Poe called The Telltale Heart. And it's about a man who murders another man and then kind of hears his heart beating, like the heart of the dead man. And it's like, I think we saw it last year.
Yes, we wrote it last year.
Exactly. So we read it in class this year, and I was telling them this is a story about guilt. And a novel about guilt is Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, which is the same thing, but in 800 pages. So it's like, you know what? I'm very busy. It's a great novel. I've read the novel, but it's sometimes it's like, woof. It's like, God, like you have such a huge book. And it's the same thing. A man kills another man in the first 2 pages, and then the rest of the story is like, oh my God, they're gonna know it's me. The police is coming. And it's like, it's so interesting to see that same idea in 2 pages and in 800 pages. Which obviously I don't want to shame novels. I think novels are amazing.
No.
That novel is great, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but I like short stories. Yeah, because some people don't like short stories. They only read novels. Yeah. And I am always in favor of short stories that, I say, no, you have to read. And well, I mean, my opinion.
But no, of course. But I think, I love short stories for sure.
Yeah.
So this story, so I wanted to talk about this for a second. So you were saying that this is a story that has a lot of things happening in such little time, which is so interesting. So it's the idea of politics and what it says about politics. What other themes did you find in the story? You were saying sexuality as well, like
dreams,
feminism, like aspirations,
high aspirations, sexuality and relations between relatives and parents and children.
Yeah, family relationships as well.
Relationships.
I think also the
idea
the idea of identity, like my
To
Cuban.
belong to see to belong where to belong from
Mm.
a Cuban or not.
Especially because first she moved at 10. So when you're 10 years old, you've already had enough time to grow up in one culture. Because if you move to the US when you're 2 years old, you don't really know. But if you're 10, you already have that like Cuban identity. But then also the father is convinced he's going to go back to Cuba. Like his entire life is like, I'm here for a little while to do better and get more money, and then I'll go back. But it's like, okay, so your family, at least your dad has one step out. He's not really in America. So for her, it's also like, I cannot really let go of my Cuban identity because of my parents and because of my past, obviously. So so that must be very interesting to feel like, because it's like how, like, I don't know, because like my mom is Belgian, but I've lived here my entire life. So I don't really feel Spanish either, but it's like I don't miss Belgium in a way because I've never experienced it like this child. Also,
what do you feel? Do you feel, I mean, Belgium or Catalan? Nothing.
Well, I'm Catalan, no, because I was born in Madrid, so I spent most of my time in Madrid. But okay. I don't have any specific love for Madrid. I don't feel from anywhere. Like I don't really care much about all of this. But I do feel a sense of sadness that I haven't connected to my Belgian side more, because my mom speaks to me in Spanish. So I have my Belgian nationality. I go to Belgium every year. But it's like I don't speak Flemish, and that's a bit weird. So there's the 1% of me who understands this, but the rest of me is like it's also obviously in Belgium and here we have a same kind of privilege, like class privilege, my family and me. So I've never had to worry about this. This is like a child who also has another theme of this story is the idea of poverty, of course, and like trying to climb the social ladder to get more money. Obviously, I've never had to struggle with that because my dad's family was never wealthy, but they didn't have to escape a country to, get better conditions. So.
And for example, on page 123, 123.
Yeah.
I think this paragraph, this is starting from, there are things that can't be told.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think this paragraph is very touching. I don't know how to say it. Very moving.
Yeah.
Because in few sentences, there is a lot of things said. That when we couldn't find an apartment, obviously it's a very typical condition when you are immigrant and you cannot find an apartment, or stupid things like the hair, not the hairdresser telling my mother they didn't do her kind of hair. So it's this tiny things, but they are telling lots of things, no, about
situation. Yeah, I think it's also very interesting that we talk about this now because of what's happening in the US right now, worldwide now, which is like this I was going to say awakening, but it's something that people in the US have been fighting for a long time, for racial rights, specifically Black lives. But it's interesting how it's spread around the world, and more people are like, okay, enough is enough. It's not just racism in the US, it's racism in Spain, it's racism everywhere, right? And I think it's a great movement, of course. So it's interesting in this story to see this, because to me, this was very moving, but it wasn't new or surprising, because I read a lot about this because I want to become a better person, but also because I teach US history. I always try to tell them as real a history as possible. So not just white history, but let's talk about immigration, let's talk about African Americans, let's talk about Black people. And so these are things that I've been reading about that in, for example, many hairstyling school, they only practice on straight hair. So of course you get a person with Afro hair and you don't know what to do because you've never been taught, which is terrible. Or doctors who don't see if you have a skin condition and you're white, it's more obvious. If you're black, then the doctor might be like, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. So it's like, it's interesting because these are like microaggressions that affect people, and when they build up, it becomes exhausting to live as a person of color, specifically as a darker person of color. So these are things that I think we don't really notice because our life is, there are things that for us are complicated, of course, but these are things that we've never had to worry about. Like, of course, I'm going to rent a house. Why not?
Yeah,
but
of course.
If you were Moroccan, you would not be able to rent a house. It's like, wow.
Yeah, no, but it's like the way she explained that, because she could have said, there was a lot of racism there and people didn't like us, but she said this example, and then you can feel a lot of this discrimination or this feeling.
And I think it was so beautiful how she started with, there are things that can't be told, but then she tells you.
Yes.
And
she
expects you to kind of have that empathy and understand, because okay, I couldn't find an apartment, and she doesn't really say, like, knowing that it was more than that. And maybe some people would be like, well, what was it? Because I don't really know. And then, you know, if you have a little bit of empathy and understanding of the world, you would be like, oh, because they were immigrants. So of course, and immigrants are bad kind, because if you're a Belgian moving to America, it's like, of course, welcome to our country.
Yeah.
But if you come from a bad country,
then it's not the same. No, but it was also funny because the paragraph before, she was explaining about this. They give him hugs and money and welcome him to the United States. No, it was like, oh, welcome, you're here. But then the reality was really very, very different.
Actually, I did
because they are Cubans.
Like I don't know how to do this. The line there, like, welcome to America, the land of the free. 5 minutes later,
land of the free, but because they are Cubans, she says in the first that we are Cubans, we are welcome.
Yeah,
but now is the real thing is difficult for them instead.
Yes. Yeah, of course. It's fascinating. And of course, I mean, I guess it's not just immigrants, but of course, historically, the relation between Cuba and the US has always been conflictive. And it's like, even like from this already started like at the end of the 19th century, there was like the Spanish-American War, where they were trying to control Cuba and get Cuba. And then, of course, there was like in the 60s and like all this time with, of course, with like Bay of Pigs and all these things they mentioned here. And also, I think it's interesting that they mentioned JFK, who died just that year, actually. So, and yeah, so I think the president who came after JFK was Lyndon B. Johnson, and he's considered a pretty good president. He did a lot of great things in America, but after, he was also one who escalated the Vietnam War. So then he was not really well liked. And I think, of course, throughout the entire 20th century, America doesn't only have a problem with immigrants, but also with communists. So it's that terror of communists. And there's been persecution, like in the 20s, in the 50s, like where the government was like, you need to find like the red people, like there was the Red Scare. So I think it's like that double problem of identity. You're an immigrant. You might be darker, so we don't really know about the color of their skin. But in Cuba, you have people who are black. You have people who are mixed race. So there's all that like intersection of identity problems here that affect their life in the US, like immigrant, Cuban, so relation to communism, even if the dad was like, no, I hate communism, it's the worst thing ever. But how can people know? It's like, oh, you're Cuban, you're a communist. Like if you think about Russian, or well, Russian now, maybe not, but like the USSR, or if you think about China, it's like, oh, you're a communist.
Well, maybe because they are in Miami, right? And I suppose a lot of people going to Miami this period, they were escaping from from Fidel and the communist. Well, I don't know a lot about the stories, but
yeah, I'm not. don't know that much about it either. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it's like also I found it so sad, like the father-daughter relationship. That was like devastating because the dad, and I think when she has that moment of, you're not doing this for me, you're doing it for you, I think that was so powerful as well. Like this, as opposed to Hemingway, where they're not really talking. Here she's direct. She's like, no, let's not like confuse what's happening here, because at the beginning he's like, oh, we did all this like trip from Cuba to here for her future. It's like, no, it's for your future.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, so that was on page 121.
Yeah.
When actually they say the title, like we left Cuba so you could dress like this. Which is also fascinating. Like out of all the things he could say, like we did all of this so you can wear these clothes, and it's like, what does that even matter? Like I don't think that's the thing to focus on. And
I mean,
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she says, like, for the first time and only in time in my life, I'll say, look, you didn't come for me, you came for you. You came because all your rich clients were leaving and you were going to wind up a cashier in your father's hardware store if you didn't leave, okay? And then what I think is interesting is the end of this page is where he starts beating her up. Like, he's super violent with her. And that's, I think, the irony, because before there's a moment in actually this on page 120 at the beginning. When I get older, I'll tell my father a rumor I heard that Stevenson, for all his heroics, practiced his best boxing moves on his wife. And my father will look at me like I'm crazy and say, well, yeah, he's a communist. What did you expect? Like, but you're doing the same to me. You're also practicing boxing with my body.
That's in a paragraph before, her father was looking at Stevenson as a hero in the Olympics games. But when he does something wrong, it's communist. And at the end, the father is so violent. It's so violent. No, that's the communist face.
Yes, exactly. That's like, yeah. That was like very shocking to me, the irony. Shocking, and at the same time not so much, because I could see that the way that dad is portrayed, like where he tries to commit suicide later on because, you know, life is not going so well for him. And it's like such well, I feel like in this case is like not wanting to address what's going on and the problems that he's always living in the past, in the same way that this story is kind of like living in the future and thinking about the future, because for her, part of it is like she's 10 years old. She has her life ahead. For the dad is like always remembering the past. But there was sorry, yeah.
No, I was well, I wanted to comment also on 121 after the paragraph you read.
Yeah.
Is and I will say, it's a free country, I can do anything I want. Remember, Christ, he only left because he dealt with him in that stupid swimming race when they were little.
Yeah.
Wow, I think that was wonderful, because sometimes this childish man behavior, not that you can do things that last for all your life because of stupid things, no? And maybe she was right. No, she had a problem when he was a child, and then he became anti-communist. He left Cuba. He went for stupid things. No?
Yeah, I mean, he's holding a grudge, like he's like wants revenge or something. It's like, I'm gonna go to America and become a capitalist and be rich. So it's like, you can suck it. It's like,
yeah. Well, in fact, it reminded me about Donald Trump, the actual president, because once I saw a documentary that he really had a problem with Barack Obama. I don't know if you read about that, but they had like an argument at a conference, and after that, it's like Donald Trump said, well, I want to be the president of the United States, like a kind of revenge. Because in fact, Barack Obama humiliated him a little bit, okay, saying that he was not very intelligent or something like that. And then he said, well, now I will demonstrate that I can be the president of the United States, you know. So for stupid things, you can change your life, and you can change the life
of
of
the other.
people around you, and well, the whole
Yeah.
humanity, you know. It's like, well.
That's wild. Yes. What world are we living in? Yes. So I also wanted to talk about on page 115. There's this sentence that at the beginning of the second, like after the little break, she says, "Is life destiny or determination?" So I wanted to know what you thought about this in relation to the story, but also your personal view. The idea that is like, is it, the way I understand it is your life destined, as in there's something already made for you, there's a path for you, or is it like determination as in what you determine it to be? That's how I read it. So I wanted to know what you believe within the story and also in general, of course.
I think there's a combination of both, because there are time in your life that your life is the destiny of your parents, but when you are getting older and you have more relationships and you know the world, you can determine your life. But at the beginning, is your destination. Your destiny is not in your hands, because you are under your parents' dreams, your parents' wills, and it's a combination. And in life is for her, it's a combination.
I mean, you could even see determination as, to me, when I read this, is life destiny or determination? I feel whose determination? Like, is it my determination or my parents' determination? You know, like I think you can also read it like that. There's also talks of religion here as well, like, and I think that the mother was like a little bit distant with the religious, like, Catholics that came to her and all that. So I don't know, like, you can read this in many ways, of course. But yeah, I don't know, Gloria, if you had any thoughts about this, or.
Well, I think it's a very complicated question to answer, because I used to think that it was determination, no, because I like fighting for my rights and things. But then, I don't know, I'm not sure about that, because you are who you are because of random things. I mean, I didn't choose the way, I mean, the place where I was born. I didn't choose my parents. I didn't choose. So obviously, if it was different, I would be different for sure. So in these actual circumstances, it's determination, because I fight for my rights and that. But if my parents were other parents, or I was born in, I don't know, in Africa, I would be different. I don't know. So
I guess it depends, like, what you understand by determination, destiny. Is it like a kind of providential destiny related to the gods, or is it like more has to do with, for me, if I could understand it in the sense that the privileges that are given to you when you are born. So like the things that I accomplish in my life are easier for me than they are for other people because of my privileges as a white person in this world, as a straight woman, as a person with some level who's not like poor, you know, like I have some level of comfort in my life when it comes to money. So it's like there are many things that are already easy for me that for other people are not. And I think that's, in a way, what I consider related to destiny, as in some things I will be able to achieve because of where I come from. Others I will have to determine for myself and fight for on my own. That's where I decide where I want to go. That's where you have to detach yourself from maybe your parents' determination, or like what your parents want from you, and you have to say, no, this is not what I want for my life. So I will. You can see, like, she with time, she becomes actually like anti-war. She becomes a revolutionary, and like in the 70s, there are moments here where you can see that she's actually distancing herself from her father in many ways. So in that sense, she's kind of determining her own life.
Yeah, I think when you say it's life destiny, sometimes it's a way of being how you say, lazy. Well, lazy. It's like,
Yeah.
well, this happened because it's destiny. I cannot do anything about it. No, yes, you can do something about everything.
Yes.
Well, or almost everything in your life. Okay, so you can change things. You can disagree with the society or with things. If you just say no, well, it's destiny.
I mean, yeah, I've never believed in destiny, and like I remember at uni there was a student who was like, "Yes, I believe in destiny," and I thought, no, because we were talking about history, and the first day of history, I usually explain that like history is not something that's destined. Like everything that's happened, it's happened for like coincidence. But of course, one thing leads to another, that leads to another, that leads to another. But nothing's destined to happen. So if you believe in destiny, of course, then we have a problem because you think these things were meant to happen, and they could have happened any other way. It just they happened this way.
Exactly. Yeah, I think for politicians or even for religion, that's a very good way of thinking, because if you say, well, destiny will make me my life, then you just be at home and don't do anything.
Like, don't take responsibility. So I think that's dangerous, I think, as well. And also you accept like, oh, that's what I was meant to be, and it's like, maybe not. Who decided this? Like I can fight against that and say, no, I don't want to be that. I will be my own person, which is kind of what she's trying to be here. But I think there's always that like internal struggle that she has. She's always fighting inside because she has that Cuban side of her, not just in her own identity, but related to her parent, to her past, and then the American one, you know? I think you can see that also with the green sweater. It's already at the beginning when she says on the first page, like, I'm wearing a green sweater. It's made of some synthetic material and it's mine. I've been wearing it for 2 days straight and I have no plans to take it off right now. Even though she takes it off, but she holds on to it. And then at the end, her mom gives her a box. It's like a symbol of that identity, of that journey from Cuba to America, like that she's holding on to her past while at the same time building a different future. You can combine these two things. I think it's possible to have those two things, which for the parents seem like, no, we're forgetting about Cuba. Well, the dad wanted to go back, but wanted to go back to an entirely different Cuba. Like, I wanted to change entirely. So he's like escaping and then wants to go back to a utopian, idyllic Cuba, I guess. Yeah, it's very interesting to see also how these three characters, like the mother, the father, and the daughter, how they all experience that change, no, from Cuba to America. For the dad is like a really strong like reaction, like I want to go back to Cuba, but at the same time, like there's like Americanism, like 100%. And for the daughter, it's more like yes, Cuba, yes, America, but on my own terms, you know. So yeah, I don't know. Oh, it's like
it's 7. It's 7.
Oh yeah, because the two stories give us more to talk about, but I don't know if you have any more final comments or I don't know.
No, just, well, the title was really very nice also. I think it was very, when I read the title, I thought, well, it's going to be a good story because the title is different and it's very nice.
Yeah, like a question and then directed to someone like you could dress like this, and also talks about that migration story. Yeah.
It was so nice.
And from the entire booklet, are there any stories that you remember that you've liked this year, or any that you might remember more? Just as like as a roundup moment.
Well, that one was one of my. The one I liked that very much. It's the last one.
Okay.
Very much. Very nice. And Sunny's Blues. My
Oh,
favorites were
Yeah.
Sunny's Blues. Yeah. Mhm.
The same thing.
one. Yeah.
And
I
the
think-
lottery was
Sorry?
very
Ah,
shocking.
yeah, the lottery. Yeah. I was thinking, but I couldn't remember the name, Carmen.
Lottery.
Yes, the lottery was quite heavy metal.
Yeah. That was a tough one. But Shirley Jackson tends to write like dark stories. I think I already told you when we were talking about it, like the TV show called The Haunting of Hill House is based on, like, so it's about a haunting in a mansion, and it's based on one of her novels. So she has a wild, well, she had a wild imagination.
And Clara, I wanted to ask you, is going to be another book club next year? Because for me, it's the first year. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy doing it. I have to think of what to do next year because, so this is the second year I do it. The first year we did short story as well. I think the short story format is the best, but I have to think of how to address it. I don't know if doing the same or maybe trying to find something different, maybe looking at short stories from England. So I'm not as familiar with it, but I think it would be nice. I mean, I know some great short stories from England. So maybe what I do next year is like moving to the other side, trying to find Irish, or maybe like Commonwealth. So as in countries that have been, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of the Commonwealth, but it's the countries that are actually part of the UK in terms of Queen Elizabeth is the queen of these countries, but just symbolically. So maybe I can find like Australian writers or writers from Nigeria or from like English-speaking countries that have been colonized by the English, and let's see what happens. Because that's new for me, so I don't really know that much about it, but it would be nice for me to learn as well. And then, of course, some English short stories that I know and that I love. I think that would be beautiful to see as well. So for sure. But I'm definitely going to do the book club. I just have to think of, I mean, if Carlota and Match still want me, but I have to think of how to approach it and what stories to think of. But I think the short story format is the best because novels, sometimes we don't have the time or, I don't know.
Yeah,
short story is good for what you say. You can summarize in 1 month and not to have a connection is.
Yeah, because if we did it once a month and I said, let's do this novel, there's so much to talk about that in an hour it wouldn't be enough. So, but I don't want to have 2 months for a novel. It's like, it's too much. So maybe I'll do short story, and then next year if we are able to meet face to face and talk together, maybe we can together think of other options for another year. Or even if we have the program, we can change something and we can say, okay, let's do one novel in March. And then we have time to read it, and it's not like a super long one. I don't know. We can think of options. But I think for now, with our lives, some people might not finish a novel on time. So I think it's nice because you can read it like an hour before coming, and you're like quickly reading it. And you have to talk about.
Yeah, and if you cannot attend one day, well, it's just a short story and it's not connected to the rest.
Exactly.
But then in a novel, it's difficult. So then it normally it starts in September, October, no? I don't remember.
Yeah, that's
September,
usually.
October.
We're still, because of the pandemic, it's like not sure. I think until September, everything will be online, but maybe there's a possibility to meet in person. I'm happy doing it online if it's safer. Like we can see what works best and what we can do. Like, the government says we can do. And so more about this, Carlota will know. But from what I know, every year it's been like September, October, maybe October, the first one, I think.
October.
See, this year we began in October.
Yeah.
This year we began in October.
So, so we have like a bit of time, so I can hand in the stories, and then like I do my little syllabus, and then you can buy it, and then
So anyway, we have to ask to Carlota, no? And
I think she'll probably let you know, like once they decide what they want to do. But I think if you show in, of course, they're going to start working on it faster. I mean, I'm guessing they're already preparing everything for next year. So in theory, everything continues, but I don't know when. I haven't yet, of course. usually I talked about it with them in July. So I guess in July we'll know more about this.
Okay.
They prepare
Well,
next.
I think even I couldn't attend all the days. I think it was very interesting, really. Very, very interesting.
Thank you. I think, yeah,
Yes, yeah, very, very much.
nice to talk about. I love talking about literature, so.
Yeah, I can see that
Yes, we can see.
you are an expert in that matter, because sometimes you go to book clubs, and I mean, obviously everybody reads books, but it's interesting because you can analyze and comment them deeply, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I think that's what I love. I think usually we're not. Oh, Matt has told us that we will continue the book club next year because she's listening to us. So I think I notice this a lot with my students at uni, is that they're not taught how to read critically and how to think for themselves. So it's just like, well, what's the story about? And they're like, well, there are two people. And I'm like, no. Like, what are the themes? And then they talk in general. Oh, this character is very happy. Yes, but where can you see it? And then they're like, well, I don't know, in general. No. Find a word or an expression. Like, you always need to look at the language, because that's how you create literature.
But the students at the university are very childish. Well, because I am also teaching things at the university, and they are very childish.
Very.
And in comparison to when I was at the university, sometimes they cannot think.
Have become more relaxed in a way, and I think also there's so much input nowadays, we can get distracted by so many things that they don't actually stop and think. Also,
yes,
the school system, I feel like, is very old-fashioned, and it should change, because it places emphasis on memorizing, and for me it's more about thinking. And they don't know how to think. So that's what I teach them. I'm like, it's time to think, because then you get an email, you don't know how to answer it. You talk to friends, you don't know how to argue. You believe fake news. And it's like, you have to be able to read and contrast information, and to look at the words that you have in front of you. They don't even know how to make sentences sometimes. I'm like,
yeah.
It's not a text message.
Mistake, yeah. Tremendous. We have.
Luckily, some of them are amazing, so we have hope.
No, yes, of course. We have every type of students, but I was surprised because when first I arrived at the university, I thought, wow, the level is going to be very high. And then I thought, oh my God, they are like children.
Yeah.
You know, the opinions, and, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting older, yeah, but
no, but I just turned 32, and I totally agree. And I've been teaching for 5 years, and I remember, like, I was so nervous when I started, like, oh my God, they're gonna see that I don't know enough because I don't know everything. And then when I heard them speak, I was like, oh, I'm fine. It's good.
Everything is fine.
So yeah. Well, great meeting you. Great.
Yeah. Hope to see you again next year. Well, Carmen and Clara and all the rest.
Yeah. Hopefully we can.
We will see you again.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
In October, we'll chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
we could.
A hack.
Yeah,
a virtual hack. And have a nice summer. And
you too.
And you too.
We see then in September, October.
Stay safe and wear your mask.
You too.
Always.
Okay.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.